Today's video, we are going to discuss about loss functions. Okay, so loss functions are pretty much important, right? And probably you may be knowing what exactly is loss function in short, and we have been discussing that from many classes now. But we will try to understand what are the different types of loss functions. So in this video, we are going to cover up loss functions. And if you don't know about loss function, suppose this is my neural network. Suppose this is my input layer, right? This is my hidden layer. Just a second, guys. I just want some confirmation before I start. Just give me a second, guys. Just give me a second, okay? Okay, just give me a second. Just give me every second, guys. Guys, can you just ping in the chat whether are you able to hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect. Because suddenly light went in my house, but I have a backup. So to come into the backup, it usually takes some amount of time. Okay. So if I get disconnected, don't worry. I'll be coming back in 2 minutes, hardly 30 seconds or 10 seconds. Okay. So yeah, there are power cuts in Bangalore. Okay, let's start. Let's start without wasting any time. Okay. So what I was explaining, guys, suppose this is my neural network. In this side, this neural network, suppose I have, this is my input layer. Okay. This is my input layer. This is my hidden layer. Okay. After this, probably I may have one more hidden layer. And finally, I have one output layer or two output layers, right? So this is the complete neural network. Now, I told you that what we do with respect to a neural network, we connect all these dots like this. Okay, this will be connected with respect to weights like that. Everything will be working in similar way, right? I hope you remember this. Very simple, right? And finally we get connected to an output layer, right? I think everybody's familiar with this. After this, what we do is that we can get our y hat. After this, we calculate our loss function, right? We calculate our loss function, right? And then I told you that whatever loss function, like in most of the time, I took this as an example, y minus y hat whole square 1 by 2, right? I took this as an example, right? And I told you that this loss function we have to reduce. We have to reduce as much as possible as we can. And for that, we use something called as optimizers. Different type of optimizers that we had actually discussed. If I take some of the examples of the optimizers are gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent, right? Stochastic gradient descent with momentum, right? All these things we had covered in our previous session, right? And we have adagrad, then we have ada delta and RMS prop. Finally, did we see? We see Adam optimizer. We also understand that which optimizer we should use, and obviously right now the Adam optimizer is the best. Now the thing is that we have discussed all these things. Now the problem is that what types of loss functions are there? What are the different types of loss function that we are going to discuss? Now, guys, usually in our problem statements, or in our any use cases, We solve two types of use cases. One is classification problems, and the second one is something called as regression problem. Second one is something called as regression problem. Usually the loss function with respect to classification and regression problems, there are different types. They are different types. And we will go through all these particular types. Okay, we'll understand all these particular types. Now, before that, loss function is also called as something called as cost function, and it is also called as error function. Different names we basically use. We use loss function, we use cost function, we use error function. Okay. Now, what is the difference between loss and the cost function? First, we'll try to understand this, because we can also give this name as an error function. Okay. So we will try to see that what is this loss function, what is this cost function. I told you guys, if I am passing only one record at a time, if I'm passing only one record at a time, and then I am calculating the loss function, then I'm calculating this error. At that time, I say that as a loss function. Again, let me just revise it, what I'm saying. I will be having a lot of inputs like this, x1, x2, x3. Suppose this is my first record. Suppose if I'm just passing one record, and then I'm getting the y hat, and then I'm calculating the error. This is basically the error, right? This is the error. Whenever we calculate in this particular way, we basically say it as a loss function, right? So if I take an example of stochastic gradient descent, where I have to pass every single record for the front propagation and backward propagation, at that time we compute a loss function. We say it as a loss function, whatever error we get. Okay, whatever error we get, it is basically given by this loss function. Now, what is cost function then? Okay, cost function basically says that, suppose if I give a batch of records, right, and then I do the forward propagation and backward propagation. If I give a batch of records and I do the forward propagation and backward propagation, then I will be writing my loss function something like this. Suppose t is my batch size. T is nothing but my batch size. It may be batch size, it may be all the records. So I usually write my loss function like this: summation of I is equal to 1 to t, 1 by 2 y minus y hat whole square. This is nothing but error, right? Now, when I am trying to compute in this specific way, where I'm doing the summation of multiple errors, at that time I basically say it as a cost function. So this is the basic difference between loss function and cost function. Okay, always remember, loss function is basically only for one record. When we take one record, when we do the back propagation, forward propagation and backward propagation, we basically consider that as a loss function. If we are discussing about cost function, that basically means we are passing records. We are passing batch size of records. Okay, we are passing batch size of records, and that is the reason this loss function will now become a cost function, and there will be a small change in this formula. Okay, this part we will be including. Okay, so this was in short a simple understanding about loss and cost function. Okay, and guys, I hope everybody is able to hear me. Can you just message in the chat once? Because some guys are saying it is lagging. Guys, please check your internet connection. Okay, I have a 5G thing. I think there should not be any problem. Okay, perfect. Thank you. But I hope you understood this particular topic. What is the difference between loss function and cost function? Yes. Error function, we basically say error function as one kind of error. This error function can be called as a loss function or cost function. Okay. Okay. So let me just disable the chat. Okay. Now again, let me repeat it once again for you all. What is the difference between loss function and cost function? Till then, I'll rub all these things so that, for the people who are saying they're not understanding, please focus on this session, guys. If you don't focus, it will be difficult for me to make you understand. Okay. It will be very, very difficult for me to make you understand. Okay. Now, In this video, we will be covering what is loss function. This loss function can also be called as cost function. Usually the name is basically given as error function also. Okay. Now, what did I explain about this is that whenever I have a neural network, suppose I have a neural network with like this, suppose I have two hidden layers, one hidden layer and finally one output. This is all connected like this, so in a simple way. Okay, this is all connected like this, and finally this is getting connected like this. So this is my input layer, x1, x2, x3, suppose x1, x2, x3. This is my hidden layer 1 and this is my output layer, right? I told you that we do the forward propagation here. What are there here? Weights are there, right? We have weights like w1 2, w11, w12, then you have w21, w22, then you have w31, w32, and similarly here the other weights will be assigned, so something like w41, w42, right? And finally I get my output layer. This output layer is nothing but y hat, and after this we compute the loss function. Now let's understand the basic difference between loss function and cost function. Whenever I provide only one record at a time and do forward propagation, I get my y hat. Then whatever formula that I'm applying, like this 1 by 2 y minus y hat whole square, this is only for one record, and in one record only we'll be able to compute the loss or the error. At that time we will basically say it as a loss function. If I pass batch of records, okay, batch of records, and then I compute my loss function, at that time this loss function will be called as cost function. Only this is the basic difference. Okay, and the formula will be something like summation of I is equal to 1 to t y minus y hat whole square. This is just an example of a formula, guys, but the major thing is that you need to consider this. Here t is nothing but the batch size. Okay, so here what do we mean by over here? Since we are providing some batch size, it is basically called as a cost function. Always remember, whenever you have more than one records and you're computing your y hat and your loss function, it automatically becomes a cost function. Okay, if you are just playing with one record and trying to find out the loss function or the error value, then it is basically called as loss function. So this is the basic difference between this. What is error function? See, this can be called as an error function. Both are error function only the names what we call it is a little bit different. This in the case of single records, this in the case of multiple records. Now, as I said that in our problem statement, we have usually classification, and the second type is called as regression problem statement. So we have this both kind of problem statement, and whenever we are going to discuss with respect to problem statement, so in this video, I'm going to first of all discuss about what are the different loss function in regression problem statements. Okay, so we are going to discuss about this. What are the different loss function? I told you, right? With the help of loss function, we'll be getting error. Our optimizer work will be to reduce this loss function with the help of concepts like gradient descent and all. So what are the different loss function? So the first loss function that we basically say is something called as squared error loss. Squared error loss. Okay, this is the first loss function. Usually squared error loss is basically given by a simple formula, that is L is equal to y minus y hat whole square. That's it. This is my formula with respect to squared error loss. Okay, if I really want to convert this into cost function, then this will become, I'll write cost function as j summation of I is equal to 1 to t y minus y hat whole square. Here t is nothing but t will be called as batch size. Now, what is this? Why it is important? Why it will work well? What are the disadvantages of this kind of error loss or squared error loss? We'll try to understand. Okay, so this is also called when I take this, right, when I take this is called as squared error loss. If I take this is basically called as mean squared error loss. Okay, mean squared error loss. So this is the basic difference between these two, but we basically say this as MSC. Okay, the this particular cost function we can also say it as a MSC, mean squared error. Okay, now this was the understanding of this. Now we'll try to understand why this function is good, why it will work well, what is the main functionalities of this, what are the advantages and disadvantages. We'll try to discuss this. The first, coming to the advantages. And guys, if you have any questions, just keep a note of that. At the end, I'll try to give you some time where we'll be discussing about some of the advantages and disadvantages. Now, what are the advantages? Okay, first of all, if you see this particular function, this function is in the form of a quadratic equation. In the form of quadratic equation. We'll discuss about this, guys. What is quadratic equation? Quadratic equation is usually an equation in the form like ax square plus bx plus c. Linear algebra, right? We have seen this kind of equation. How I'm getting this? just just take y minus y hat whole square. This is nothing but a minus b whole square. If I expand it, I'll be getting in the form of a quadratic equation, right? Now when we have a quadratic equation, there are some properties with respect to quadratic equation. First property, I'll just make a sub point. The first property of a quadratic equation is that when we plot the quadratic equation, when we plot the quadratic equation, we get a gradient descent. We get a gradient descent without, I'll write, we get a gradient descent with only global minima. Please take a note on all these particular points, guys. Whenever we plot a quadratic equation, we get a gradient descent with only global minima. Now, what does this basically mean? I'll go to my Google. Okay, I'll go over here. I'll just search. Okay, let's search plot quadratic equation. Okay, when we plot quadratic equation, do you see this diagram, guys? Do you see this diagram? This diagram basically says that whenever we try to plot quadratic equation with respect to this x value, we are always going to get this gradient descent, and there will always be one global minima. There will not be any local minima. So the next advantage is that, okay, over here, the second thing is that we don't get any local minima. So at the end of the day, when you are actually using this loss function, that is mean squared error, you are going to converge into the global minima after some point of time. It is compulsory. It is going to happen. Okay. So this was the advantages with respect to this. And one more thing that you have to note, as we have discussed advantages, okay, we should also discuss, and one more thing, okay, this square, what does this square basically say? Okay, what does this y minus y hats basically say? In this, I will write the second point. It says the MSC loss penalizes the model. See this, what I'm writing. It penalizes the model, okay, for making large errors by squaring them. Just try to understand this statement, guys. These are a very important statement. The MSE loss penalizes the model for making larger errors by squaring them. Now just imagine that suppose your y minus y hat is huge. The error is huge. If the error is huge, we are squaring it. Okay, we are squaring it. That basically means we are basically saying that if your error by mistakenly is huge, we are going to penalize them by squaring them. Okay, And by this, definitely our optimizers will definitely know that yes, we need to fix this issue. Okay, because when we are trying to find out the difference between y and y hat, okay, at that time we are basically saying that this particular MSE loss penalizes the model for making larger errors by squaring them. Okay, so whenever there is a larger error, we are going to penalize this. We are going to penalize by squaring it. That is the next property of this MSE loss function. Okay, now coming to the disadvantage, let's discuss about the disadvantage. What is the disadvantage of this kind of MSE loss function? Okay, so my second thing that I want to discuss is about the disadvantage. Now, what is this disadvantage? The first disadvantage and the only disadvantage is that this is it is not robust to outliers. This is the only disadvantage. Now see this, guys. What I am trying to say over here with respect to outliers. What is outliers? Outliers are basically values, or suppose if I have a data set, okay, and in that, if I say that, okay, my data is having some kind of outliers, this basically indicates that. So suppose if I have a regression problem statement, I have some of the points like this, okay, okay, and suppose there are some outliers which is completely present at this side, okay. Just imagine, since we are doing squaring, right, y minus y hat whole square, right. Now if I try to suppose if I try to draw a line like this, linear regression line, when I have this kind of outliers, at that time you'll be able to see that this distance, this error value, because this suppose is my y, okay, and this is my y hat for this, okay, this is my y hat, this is my y. When I try to find out the difference between this, obviously since there is an outliers, and when we try to square it, this will also be a very very big value, right. This will also be a very very big value. So in this case, since there is an outlier, it is not robust to this outliers. Whenever we are actually solving a regression problem statement, it is not robust. It is clearly getting the impact of the outliers where your loss function is quite a big value, right? Since your outliers is present over here, but when you're trying to find out the difference between them, it is saying that even though you have an outlier, it is saying that you have a huge distance. And since because of this outliers, my model is also penalizing it by squaring it. Instead, what we had focused on is that by using feature engineering, if you could remove this particular outliers, this issue would not have come, right? We could have solved that specific problem. But right now, because of these outliers, we are penalizing that particular y value, even though it is an outlier. And because of this, we basically say that this function is not robust to outliers. Okay, whenever there is an outliers, we are unnecessarily penalizing the model itself. Always try to understand in that specific way. So these were the 2 points that I wanted to mention with respect to mean squared error. Now coming to the second type. The second type, in order to prevent this, we have something called as absolute error. Okay, so we have something called as absolute error loss. Absolute error loss. We also say it as mean absolute error loss and all. So suppose this is my loss function, which is basically given. Now, instead of doing squaring, we are going to take the absolute value of y minus y hat, the difference between y minus y hat. Suppose if I'm deriving this as a cost function, then it will be like summation of I is equal to 1 to t. And here I'm just going to write it as y minus y hat. Now see in this, what is the major advantages? First of all, whatever disadvantage was present in my previous mean absolute error, okay, here it is solving that. What it is solving over here, let's see. The first advantages is that the MAE, that is the mean absolute error, is more robust to outliers as compared to MSE. Okay, so this is the major advantages of using absolute error loss. Because understand, even though we have an outliers, We are trying to find out a difference, but we are not penalizing enough, right? Even though there is an outlier, it will be working in a similar way for all the points. Yes, obviously, when I'm considering absolute error loss, it is just fixing the outliers problem, right? And always remember, guys, this handling the absolute term or the modulus operator in mathematical equation, it is not very, very easy. Okay, but since this is the computation is very, very difficult, I'll say this is the disadvantage. The computation is very, very difficult, but if I talk about the advantages, it is fixing the previous problem, that it is saying that it is more robust to outliers, where my previous MSc was not robust to outliers. Okay, so guys, did you just understand these two terms? And I'll give you chance to talk. Just a second. Chat. Yes, you can drop a chat. Did you understand these two terminologies? What I'm trying to discuss? Yes. Second point again, sir, of first. Wait, I'll discuss that. Let me just get the yes, 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 yes. Why computation is difficult for you? Because we are using a modulus operand. It is said that mathematically implementing a modulus operand is very, very difficult. Okay. How squaring would penalize? Just imagine, right? Suppose my difference between this y and y hat is a smaller value. Okay, suppose my difference between y and y hat, if I'm going to consider my difference between y and y hat is 2. Now, if I really want to penalize, I'm doing the squaring of this. 2 square 4. That basically says that okay, the error is still more. It is a bigger value, right? Yes, also for the mean. Why will MA have no, it will not have any local minima. Okay, MA will also not have local minima. For MSc, we divide by n. Yes, sorry, did I miss that point? Okay, okay. So I'm just disabling the chat, guys. When I say mean, right, that basically indicates that I'm definitely going to divide this whole value by n. Okay, 1 by n. Okay, in this case it will be 1 by t. Okay, in this case it will be 1 by t. Okay, 1 by t. I'm going to divide by this. Okay, then only it will become mean absolute error. Here also I'm going to divide by 1 by t. Then it will become mean squared error. Again, guys, I'll repeat it. The MAE is more robust to outliers since we are not penalizing the outliers by squaring it. Okay, so that is the reason how this mean absolute error is more robust to outliers. The second terminology is that the major disadvantage that scientists have found out that the computation of modulus operation is very, very computive expensive, right? So it is not that easy, and it will probably take more time to do this kind of computation. So these are the advantages and major disadvantages of mean absolute error. But really, guys, you just need to understand when to use what. That I'll definitely tell you. Now, coming to the third part, we basically say it as Huber loss. Huber loss. Now, in this part, guys, what we are going to do is that we are going to take the combination of both quadratic, or you can also say we are going to combine both mean squared error, and the second one is called as mean absolute error. We are going to combine this. And for this, the loss function, how it is written, just focus over here, guys. The loss is basically written as 1 by 2 y minus y hat whole square. Okay, if the first condition is if modulus of y minus y hat, okay, is less than or equal to delta value. Okay, the second condition basically says that delta y minus y hat minus 1 by 2 delta square otherwise. Okay, I'll tell you, don't worry about this equation, but these are some mathematical equation. Okay, obviously you know this y. What is y minus y hat whole square? This is basically my quadratic equation. This is my quadratic equation, right? I hope everybody knows this, right? And if I take this equation, y minus y hat, this is nothing but it is a linear equation. This is a quadratic equation. This is a linear equation. This equation that we will be saying in the in the mean absolute error, this is called as a linear equation, guys. Now, the thing is that someone asked me whether there will be local minima or not. Whether there will be local minima. The answer is that yes, it may have local minima. It may have local minima. That is also one disadvantage of this. It may have local minima. In order to prevent this, local minima, okay, we may also use something called as Huber loss. In Huber loss, we take the combination of both. One is quadratic equation, and this delta value. This delta value is just like an hyperparameter. Okay, this delta value is like a hyperparameter. If when we are trying to compute the mean absolute error between y minus y hat, if it is less than this value, then I'm going to use this quadratic equation, and then only I'm going to penalize it. So so what does this basically say that, guys? Less than or equal to delta. This basically says that suppose if I have an outlier, obviously when I'm trying to compute y minus y hat, it will be at least greater than this particular delta. This delta will be some value, right? But since outlier is there, this difference is going to become huge, right? But if it is not an outlier, then we are going to simply use this mean squared error. We know what are the advantages of mean squared error. The advantages of mean squared error is that it is a quadratic equation. For this, we are always going to get a global minima, right? And then we are also able to penalize the correct error by squaring it. Now, what if this value is greater than or equal to delta? This usually happens in the form of outliers. At that time, we will be using this linear equation, which is similar to this particular equation, that is of a mean absolute error. Then again, we are subtracting by 1 minus 2 delta square, okay, to basically accommodate this delta changes. Okay, so this was a research that was done by the researchers itself, and they tried to combine both MSc and MAE in order to fix the problem that we are facing in MSc and MAE. Okay, so this was the third technique with respect to the Huber loss. Guys, if you have any question, just keep a note of that, and at the end of the day, I'll try to answer it. But understand one thing, these all are equations. Scientists are playing with this kind of equation. Okay, we are trying to fix this problem. There is a local minima problem. The reason why there is a local minima problem in MSc, because this is a simple linear regression. It is not a quadratic equation. Okay. Now, in order to fix both of this, what we have done, we have used Huber loss, and we have combined both MSc and MAE, where it is a combination of quadratic equation, it is a combination of linear equation. Isn't it correct? Right? And by this delta value is taken as a hyperparameter, and delta, usually if I consider delta, guys, just understand this. If I consider delta, obviously we'll be knowing that if I'm subtracting this y with y hat, and suppose this y is an outlier, at that time this difference will be huge, right? When the difference is not huge, I'm going to use this mean squared error, which is a quadratic equation, to find out the loss. Otherwise, in the remaining scenario, I'm going to use this loss function, right? So I hope you get this particular point, guys. And if you have any question, keep a note of that, and then we'll discuss about it. Okay. Now coming to the next technique, coming to the fourth technique. And this fourth technique, we basically say this as for the classification problem. Okay, so the fourth technique that I'm going to discuss, sorry. Okay. So for the fourth technique, which is specifically for classification problem, okay, this technique name is something called as, first of all, I'm just going to write it as cross entropy. Cross entropy. Okay. Now, cross entropy, I'm just going to write it down how the equation looks like. This cross entropy, if you know logistic regression in machine learning, guys, logistic regression in machine learning, we probably are going to use the same equation of the loss that is being used in logistic regression. So the loss can be specified as minus y multiplied by log of y hat minus 1 minus y multiplied by log of 1 minus y hat. So this is the complete formula for the loss in case of cross entropy. Okay, in the case of cross entropy. Okay. Now, first of all, let me just bring some of the points. Okay. Over here, this type of equation is specifically for binary cross entropy. We'll discuss about what is binary cross entropy and all. So just wait for some time. Okay. So this equation is basically given for the binary cross entropy. Now, let me consider that if my y value is 0, or let me just write this down equation. This equation will in turn get converted into two things. Okay, two things. One is minus log 1 minus y hat if your y is equal to 0. Just understand, guys, y is what? Y is your actual value. Y is nothing but your actual value. In case of binary classification, what values can y have? It can have either 1 or 0, right? So if y is 0, if we try to equate 0 over here, then this 0 multiplied by log of y will be 0. So we will be having 1 minus this minus log of 1 minus y hat. So this is one criteria. Okay. The other criteria is that we will be having log of y hat if y is equal to 1. Right? These are the two conditions. See, everyone. If I have y is equal to 1, if I have y is equal to 1, I'll place over here y is equal to 1. Okay, y is equal to 1. Then this will be nothing but minus log of y. Over here, if I place y is equal to 1, this will become 1 minus 1 is 0. So these two conditions are basically there with respect to cross entropy whenever we are trying to find out the cross entropy loss function. But now the question rises, how do we find out y hat? How do we find out y hat? Y hat is basically found out by using sigmoid activation function. We saw that, right? In the last layer, before computing the loss, we have to compute y hat. And in order to compute the y hat, we used the equation that is like this: 1 plus 1 e to the power of minus z, right? Now, this is the way how we compute y hat. And after computing y hat, we will be placing this y hat value in this loss function, and we will be getting a value in return, right? And then back propagation will be happening. This is specifically called as binary cross entropy because with this equation, we will be solving only binary classification. Okay, we will be solving binary classification. Okay, so this is my loss function with respect to binary cross entropy. And this binary cross entropy gives us two values if you are solving binary classification. One is if your actual value is 0. At that time, my equation becomes like this. If your actual value is 1, my value becomes like this. Okay. And how do we calculate y hat? Remember, in the last layer, in the last output node here, we apply an activation function which is called a sigmoid for binary classification. And then we compute a y hat, then we compute our loss function. Right? So this was an example with respect to cross entropy. Okay, cross entropy. Now let's discuss one more thing, which is called as which is called as categorical cross entropy. Or if I want to solve multi-class classification, then how this cross entropy will change. Okay, so let's discuss the next point, next loss. Okay, next loss, which I'll be saying with respect to classification problem, okay, which is called as multi-class. So here I'm just going to write it down, my fifth point, which is called as multi-class cross entropy loss. Multi-class cross entropy loss. So this is my fifth loss function, which I'm going to discuss. And this is basically given by this equation. See, guys, everybody see. My loss with respect to x of I and y of I is basically given as minus summation of j is equal to 1 to c. Okay. And then here I will write y I of j multiplied by log of y hat I of j. I'll discuss about this. What is this I of j? When I say multi-class, okay, that basically means my output will be having multi-class. Okay. When we have output as multi-class, suppose I have output like good, bad, neutral. Okay. So if I really want to represent good, what will be good represented as? It will be represented if I do one hot encoding. Because in multi-class cross entropy, we perform one hot encoding. Okay. We basically say that our output will be represented in the form like this. Suppose in my one of the record, I have feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, right? And this is my output. Okay. Suppose this is my first record, 2, 3, 4, and I say that the output is good. Then I have 4, 5, 6, the output is bad. And then I have 7, 8, 9. Here I'll say that my output is neutral. Okay. Whenever we have this kind of scenarios, this is basically a multi-class classification problem, right? I have multiple categories. Internally, when we are using this loss function, which is called as, and this multi-class cross entropy loss, the first type is something called as categorical cross entropy. Categorical cross entropy. So whenever we use this kind of cross entropy, internally, good is basically represented by this 1, 0, 0. Bad is represented by 0, 1, 0. Neutral is represented by 0, 0, 1. These are represented by bits. This is called as bits. Each and every terminology is bits over here. So internally, you'll be able to see that. Suppose I have this particular feature y1, f2, sorry, f3, and my output will now be having y1, y2, y3. Okay. Suppose I have this value 2, 3, 4. My output is represented by 1, 0, 0. This is my output. This is represented in the form of 3 bits. Okay. Similarly, I have 4, 5, 6. Then it is basically represented as 0, 1, 0. Again, 3 bits. Then again, I have 7, 8, 9. This is basically represented by how many bits? It is basically represented by 0, 0, 1. So these all are represented by 3 bits. Okay. So here I can say that this is my y, y11, y12, y13. Okay. So I basically have written yij, yij, like that, right? So this, with respect to this record, it is represented as 100. This is represented as 010. This is represented as 001. I'm just showing you some internal working, guys. Okay. Internal working. Now, based on the number of categories, you can also decide how many number of bits you have to use. Suppose if I have 4 categories, obviously I have to use 4 bits. If I have 5 categories, I have to basically use 5 bits. So like this, the representation can be shown. But still, we did not still understand the equation. What is this equation? Okay. Now let's see what is this equation. When I say yij, what does this basically mean? Yij basically says that whether, see this, guys, I'll just try to explain you with respect to these equations that I have written. Okay, it's a pretty simple equation. So you can see over here, summation of j is equal to 1 to c yij multiplied by log of yij hat. Okay, now over here, I can write in this equation, I can say that here my yi is one hot encoded, right? I'm using the same equation I'm trying to explain you. One hot encoded target vector. See, this is a vector, right? This one is a vector. This, I have this y1, y2, y3, right? This is one of the vector saying, specifying, it is a one hot encoded vector itself, right? I have values like yi1, yi2, yi3, right? So I can basically say that for the first record, suppose for the first record, I can also represent this y is nothing but, this yi is nothing but, you can see over here how I'm going to write over here. This yi is nothing but, it is something like this. It is the combination of yi1, comma yi2, comma yi3. What does this I basically specify? I basically specifies the row number. I specifies the row number over here. So I1, I2, I3. 3 is the number of bits based on the number of output categories, right? So similarly, I can extend this till C category, right? I can extend this to C category. So let me just write it down over here. I can extend this thing till C category. So I can extend this till y of I of C categories. Suppose if I have three categories, then I can write y1, I1, yi2, yi3. If I have C categories, I'll be able to write till yic. Okay. And what is this? This is basically one hot encoded format, right? One hot encoded format. Now, let me write one more condition after this. I will write yij is equal to 1, 0. I'll be having two elements. If the ith element, if the ith element is in class J, just understand this, guys. I'll still write it down for you. Simple. If the ith element is in class J, then it is going to be 1. Else, if it is not present, it is going to be 0. So otherwise, this is going to be 0. What is this? What is this? This we are just trying to specify what will yi of j will be. Okay. When this yi of j is 1, that basically says that this particular output belongs to this class. Okay. This class. Otherwise, it does not belong to that class. Okay. If the ith element is in class J, then only it is going to belong to that particular class. Okay. So that is what it specifies. And so I've written yi of j. So over here, I've written this particular first one as 100, then 010001. Okay. This is what it basically indicates. If this element belongs to this class, this is going to be 1. If this element does not belong to this particular class, it is going to be 0. Okay. Now the next question rises, how do we calculate the yi hat? How do I calculate yi hat? Because I have this yij hat, right? How do I calculate it? How do I calculate it? How to calculate this? And the answer is pretty much simple, guys. Very, very simple. I hope you all know this. That is, we use a softmax function. We use softmax activation function. We use softmax activation function. Okay. Now, what is this softmax activation function? Softmax activation function, I've already told you so many times in my previous session. It can be written like this, but always remember my value will be e to the power of z of I divided by summation of j is equal to 1 to k. Okay. And e of z of j. Now, what does this basically say? That suppose I have this example. I showed you one example, right? I have 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay. I told you that suppose this is my output layer. And before this, I have some hidden layers. Okay. And till here, my value is something like this. After this, I pass it to this output layer, right? Like this. So till here, suppose I have these values like 10, 20, 30, 40. If I perform this operation, that is e to the power of 10, suppose I want to find out what is the value, what is the output with respect to the first one. I can write e to the power of 10 divided by e to the power of 10 plus e to the power of 20 plus e to the power of 30 plus e to the power of 40. So when I do this particular division, it will basically give me a probability value, which is nothing but y hat, right? In sigmoid, in binary, see, this is multi-class classification problem. This is multi-class classification problem, right? In multi-class classification problem, we basically use softmax activation function. In binary classification problem, we use sigmoid activation function. But I hope you have understood. When we are using this multi-class cross entropy loss, internally, my y hat, suppose there are more than two categories, I'm going to use this as one hot encoding. And that is what I've written the steps over here. My yi is basically represented by this, where yij is 1 if the element is in that class j. Suppose if this element belongs to this class, this output is this class, then this value will become 1, else will become 0. After this, how do I compute my y hat? Y hat is basically computed by the softmax activation function. This softmax activation function will be giving me some probability value, and that probability value I'll try to replace in this particular equation. That's it. And after that, I will be getting this loss function. This is how we use multi-class cross entropy loss. Okay. I know you may be having some questions. I'll try to answer it. Don't worry. But before that, just try to understand these things. Okay. understand this thing. Now, guys, I will just enable the chat to see your. You can tell me, did you understand these topics or not? Last one, no. Last one, which one? Last one are you talking about? Multi-cross, no. Multi-class, no. Okay, I'll explain multi-class once again. Okay. Okay. How to find out the correct value of delta in Haber loss? It will be decided by the network itself, guys, considering the outliers. Okay, and sometimes we also specify some values when we are giving that loss function. What is mean by penalization? How the equation? Okay, I'll take up these questions. Okay, let me disable the chat and let me talk about multi-class classification again. Okay, guys, please focus over here. Okay, multi-class classification. See, I hope everybody understood cross entropy. In cross entropy, what we do is that and specifically, we are solving binary cross entropy. In binary cross entropy, this is basically the equation of the loss. And this loss will get converted to something like this. If the y is 0, I'll be getting minus log 1 minus y hat. If the y is 1, minus log y of hat. And then when we are applying, in order to compute the y hat, we'll be using a sigmoid activation function. Okay, we'll be computing the sigmoid activation function. The sigmoid activation function helps us to find out the probability for a binary classification. Now, in case of multi-class, suppose if I have multi-class classification, one example of multi-class cross entropy is categorical cross entropy. Okay, categorical cross entropy. I've given that in this, the output will be multiple classes. It will just not be having only binary classes. It will be having more than 2 classes. Now, in this example, you can see that I've taken F1, F2, F3. This is my independent feature. This is my output, like good, bad, neutral. So I have 3 categories. And for this, I have to definitely use this multi-class cross entropy loss. This is basically given by the equation summation of j is equal to 1 to c y of ij multiplied by log of y of ij hat. What is this c? C is basically saying the number of categories. Okay, number of categories. Why we have written as yi of j? Yi of j. Yi of j is basically written because whenever we have multiple categories, internally, we are going to form this kind of one-hot encoding. We are going to find this kind of one-hot encoding. The one-hot encoding basically says that suppose this value, if I take this value is nothing but, it is nothing but y11, y12, y13. This value is nothing but y12, y22, y23. That is what this yi of j is basically representing, right? Yi of j is basically my truth value. Okay, truth value. Suppose we say that in the first record, and suppose, guys, just take this particular example. Okay, I'll just again write it down. First of all, understand what is one-hot encoding. Okay, what is one-hot encoding? See this. What is one-hot encoding? One-hot encoding over here. Suppose I have good, bad, neutral. So I'll try to convert this over here like good, bad, neutral. Okay, this will be one-hot encoding. Wherever there is a good value, this will become 1, this will become 0, this will become 0. Whenever there is bad, this will become 1, this will become 0, this will become 0. Whenever there is neutral, this will become 0, this will become 0, this will be 1. Now this is my y. This whole thing is my y. Why we are representing by 3 bits? Because I have 3 categories. If I have 4 categories, then it will be represented by 4 bits. If I have 5 categories, it will be represented by 5 bits. Now, if I go back to the equation, I say yij. What does this yij basically say? In this case, this is my first record. Okay. For this value, I can represent it as y11. For this value, I can represent it as y12. For this value, I can represent it as y13. Suppose if I go to my second record, then this value will be represented by y21. This will be represented as y22, and this will be represented as y23. And similarly, I have y31, y32, y33. Like this, we'll be able to represent each and every bit with some value of y of I of j. right? Now, what I have written over here, see over here, I have written the steps, right? I have written the steps over here. Here, y of I is nothing but one hot encoded target vector. So I've written that in the same way, right? I've written that same in the same way. So if I rub this is nothing but one hot encoded target, right? One hot encoded target. You can see this. This is basically represented by like this, right? It is represented like this. Now, when I'm representing it like this y of I, now what is my y of I? It will be the combination of this thing, right? My output is the combination of these things, right? My output is the combination of bits. So it is represented like this. And it depends on the number of categories. If I have number of categories as 100, then my yi is represented from 1 to 100 in the one hot encoded format, right? Now this y of ij, how we are placing 1 on 0? This is like one hot encoding only, right? How does one hot encoding basically get implemented? Wherever this specific class, in the first record I have good. So good is basically having 1, remaining all are having 0. So this is how it is basically represented, right? Then we are saying that how do we compute this yi of yij of hat? Yij of hat is basically my output value, right? Yij of hat is my output value. In this equation, I have to compute this. And this is only computed in the output layer, right? In the output layer, we are computing yij hat, right? Because I may have any number of hidden layers like this. Finally, my output will be here. Here, I'll be computing my yij hat, right? Here only I'll be computing, and then I'll be deriving my loss function. Now, in order to compute this, since this is a multi-class classification problem, I told you that we will be applying a softmax activation function here. We will be applying a softmax activation function here. I have told you this in my previous class. And softmax activation function is basically given by this particular equation. This also we discussed it, right? This is what a softmax activation function looks like. Suppose before this, I have these 4 values, okay? Before this, just understand in this way. Before this layer, I will be having some values here, right? And after on top of that, I will be applying a softmax activation function. So in order to apply a softmax activation function, we'll be applying this kind of formula. And finally, we'll be getting our probability. That probability output will be put up over here. And based on that, this cross entropy will be computed, right? This cross entropy will be computed. And our main aim will be that I have to reduce the loss function with the help of optimizers. Okay. So guys, I will give you a chance because I know you all are stuck in this. I don't know whether you are able to understand or not, but I have told you the entire maths over here, how things are happening. So what I'll do is that just try to ping in the chat, understand whether you understood or not. Yij and y hat j will be a vector. So how does the loss is calculated in the formula? See, log of y of ij, right? See, what is y of I hat of j? You will basically be getting the probabilities values over here with respect to different values. Here we are doing the summation with respect to categories. It is just going to put the values over here. Okay. Did not understand softmax. You have to see the previous video. Softmax is an activation function which we have discussed in our previous session. How it will work for numerical features. For numerical features, that only, right? For numerical features, you don't use multi-class classification and category cross entropy, right? We use, what do we use in regression problem statement? We use mean absolute error, mean squared error, right? We use Huber loss. Y of ij will be 1 and 0 and it will be binary classification. So thank you guys. Everybody is saying that yes, you are able to understand. That is the major thing. So softmax is used when we have more than 40 hidden layers. Who told softmax is used when we have more than 40 hidden layers? I told you that softmax is used only when your output is having more than 2 classes. Can you apply binary classification case to category cross entropy and see if we are able to get binary cross entropy equation? I am not able to derive. Okay. See, in multi-class cross entropy loss, I think we are taking the first terminology only. This first terminology over here. Okay. And we are basically assigning with respect to different categories. Yes, understood. Yes, ranking is it classification? Ranking is Ranking, you can consider that it is a discrete. If I say ranking, it is an ordinal feature, and ranking can also be considered as a classification problem. Okay, y hat is scalar. Understood cross entropy. Thank you. This is for a single input. How would we the cost function? So for the cost function, we'll be taking the batch size. Okay, guys, I cannot discuss all the regression and classification machine learning models. You can check out my YouTube channel, right? How will I discuss the machine learning in these deep learning topics? He mixed softmax and Swiss ReLU. Yes. So guys, whenever you have hidden layers more than 40, at that time you have to do the Swiss activation function. But every example we can multiply with only one. I really do not understand this, Karipam. Yes, sir, I got that. What is outlier? Please explain. Please check out my. See, outlier basically means what? It's simple, right? Whenever I drawn this equation, here, suppose these are my data points. Here, and these are some points that are present in such a way that it is not at all similar to these points. It is present at somewhere else. Okay? Just think in that specific way. Softmax is used only for output more than 3 layers. See, I don't say layers, right? Output means categories. Layers is for hidden layers. Okay. What exactly is entropy? Entropy is basically used to calculate the probability or likelihood. Okay. If someone age is 5,000, then it is outlier. Yes, obviously it is outlier. Yes, sir. I was confused that time. Both activation function. Yes, please make sure. So you have to revise. Okay. Purvan says, please summarize multi-class categorical cross entropy again. See, that only I'm telling you, right? There are different formulas. Okay. This is my binary cross entropy formula. This is my multi-class cross entropy formula. The reason why I have written y of ij, because the output is basically represented in the form of one hot encoded. Okay. If it is represented is in the form of one hot encoded, I have to calculate with respect to this I of j itself, right? And how do we calculate this y of I hat is basically by using softmax activation function. The first two things that I have written over here is basically the implementation of one hot encoding. One hot encoding. This is the implementation of one hot encoding. Once it is implemented, now in order to compute y ij of hat, I have to use a softmax activation function. And for that, I use this specific formula. Okay. What do you mean by cross entropy? What do you mean by cross entropy? See, entropy is just like, I think you have heard entropy in decision trees also. Entropy is basically a terminology that is given to calculate probabilities. Okay. So because of that, we use entropy. Now, okay, I will not continue right now because I'll allow you to talk. So you can ask me questions till we discuss this one. What thing you did not understand? So I'm trying to unmute you, so you can ask the question, guys.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, actually for the regression, all the errors that you have considered is the main factor is outliers, right? For any regression like MSE, absolute
See, I
and
told you that you can use MSC, but what is the
yeah.
problem with respect to MSC? I told it is not robust to outliers, right?
Yes. So my question is, when we any kind of model when we feed, right, the major thing we do EDA is to mitigate outliers, do feature engineering. So we will not put the exact input to model. We will do a lot of data massaging. So in that, outliers will already be minimized. Why again only for regression the outliers is considered? So before putting the input
First,
data to
did you
model.
understand what is outliers, first of all?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
So if we have an input system, we first do some exploratory data analysis. We'll see outliers, we'll see a lot of other factors, right? Then we will do little bit of transformation for substitute outliers, and then we will go for feature engineering. So this is a common steps before feeding it
Mm-hmm.
to any model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
even if it's a regression model, the outliers by the time when we properly do feature engineering and data cleaning, that will be
Mm-hmm.
minimum already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again,
Okay.
why after we put it into a model, we are
So
still considering.
understand one thing, if you are doing that all work, you don't have to worry about this point.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Chris,
Yes.
yeah, can you please explain Hoover loss equation once, please?
Which loss?
Hoover loss.
Huber loss. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
See,
In
in
equation
Huber
are a little
loss,
bit confusing
yeah,
in lambda function.
In Huber laws, I told you that we are going to take the combination of mean squared error and mean absolute error. Okay. Understand one thing. What is the main thing with respect to Huber laws? I told you that this y minus y hat, okay, y minus y hat is fixing the outliers problem, right? It is more robust to outliers. So they came up with a loss function which has this more mean squared error and mean absolute error. It says that if there are no outliers, how do we find out there are no outliers? If this difference is smaller than this delta value, okay, that
So
basically
we
means
have to fix that delta value.
yes, we have to fix this delta value, and there this can also be taken as a hyperparameter.
Okay.
This can be also taken as a hyperparameter. When always it is less than this, that basically means it is not having outliers, right? So we are going to solve with this particular problem, which is nothing but mean squared error. The other thing is that suppose if there are outliers, then we have to use this kind of linear equation. This is used to prevent it. And again, guys, here you can see that this may also lead to local minima. So whenever there is a chances of local minima, it will try to calculate the loss based on this particular formula. Does it
Okay.
make sense?
Yes, sir. And in cross entropy now we have to use negative symbol as starting.
In cross entropy, what? Can you repeat it?
See, in cross entropy now we have to use minus negative symbol in y.
Yes.
So but in other loss function we could not use negative symbol. Why?
In this loss function, you're saying?
Cross entropy, see here, loss is equal to minus y cross log y
Huh.
hat.
Huh. So here you are using minus, right? This is the formula that is getting derived, guys.
Okay, okay.
Understand? This is from logistic regression. This formula is coming. This formula is
Uh,
coming from the logistic regression for binary classification. This whole minus y multiplied by log of y. I'm not going to derive this. Probably I have to derive this in my ML class when I'm taking logistic regression. Okay, and the same concept is basically used over here, but you understood one thing over here, right? Whenever we are placing y is equal to 0, this is my value. Otherwise, when my y is equal to 1, this is my value. And how do I calculate y hat? Is basically by using sigma.
hey
Hi,
Krish,
Krish.
I wanted to ask you about categorical cross entropy.
Hmm?
Whether we are using one versus one classification or one versus all in if we talk about the interpretation.
It is nothing but 1 versus all.
And can you briefly explain the difference between two if that's possible now?
1 versus all. Okay, it
Mm-hmm.
basically says that suppose I have three probabilities. Suppose you can say that the three classes, right? If I combine all the
Mm-hmm.
probability, the summation will be 1.
Okay.
If I combine all the probabilities, the summation will be 1. I've uploaded a video on 1 versus all in my YouTube channel. Just check it out
Okay.
after logistic regression. Always remember, any number of class you may be having, the summation of all these probabilities will be 1.
So in our categorical, it's always one.
Yes, it is always 1 at the end of the day. See, in the output, it is like this, right? Probably in my y hat, it may come like this. Yij height, y hat, suppose it may come like this: 0.2, 0.4, 0.4, or it may be
Okay.
like 0.3, 0.5, like this. The class A is basically having 20% probability, 0.3, 30% probability. Class C is having
That
zero point
was
0.5.
for soft max you explained,
Yes,
right?
yes. And which will be having the biggest one, this will be taken as the output. Yeah.
And one versus one can have more than total
Yes.
can go more than one.
No, no, no,
So
no. One versus one will also have the summation will be only one. Okay.
what's the major difference? I didn't get that. And what activation function is used if we are going for one versus one?
See, one versus one is basically used for doing binary classification, right? Yes.
Okay.
Now, binary classification, you do it. The way is pretty much simple. You'll be having one probability value. The remaining probability value will be 1 minus p, right?
But
I'll,
Mhm.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. See, this is with respect to binary classification, right? In categorical, how do you form this formula? It is difficult.
Right.
So because of that, they have come up with this kind of loss function to find out the probabilities. In binary, it is simple, right? If you get one probability, the other probability will be 1 minus p.
1 minus, right. But we do use 1 versus 1 for multi-class as well. Like there's some other way.
Yes,
I
yes, but don't focus in that, because in deep learning, we'll make sure that we use this kind of technique only. I'll be showing you all the loss function just now after this queries is done. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hi, Krish.
Yes.
Yeah, for multi-class cross interview, can I just explain the formula and it is the my understanding is correct or not? You can just verify
Yeah.
me that. So as per the formula, so let's say yij is your true value. So if it is 1 and whatever log I will be putting probability. So if my probability is high, so I will be getting a high negative value. So negative into negative into 1, it would be a bigger positive number, right?
Yes. Yes.
And similarly, let's say my yij is 0 and my log is some probability, high probability value, so that will be 0, and summation of that will give me the loss.
Yes.
Is that the understanding?
Yes, yes. Always remember, this log function will give you a negative value. So this negative into negative will become a positive value. Okay. So your loss will always be a positive value, and you'll try to reduce that particular value to minimum. Okay, guys. Now I request you all to please mute. We'll continue the session. Please, everybody mute yourself. Please. That's a sincere request.
one. Okay.
It's okay. I will try to ask it in the last time. Okay. So we'll try to mute it, and let's continue the discussion. Abhijit Singh Jain. We don't want listen him. We don't want listen him. We don't want listen him. What is this, Abhijit? Okay, I'll talk to Abhijit. What is the problem, Abhijit? Abhijit Singh Jain. Yeah, talk, Abhijit Singh Jain. What is the problem? Abhijit Singh Jain. Abhijit, please speak up. Okay, guys. Now, what we are going to do is that let's go to the Keras documentation. Okay. Let's go to the Keras application, or I'll just search for Keras loss function. Okay. So here you will be able to see various kind of losses that has been used. Okay. So you have binary cross entropy. This is specifically used for binary classes. Okay. Binary classes. Okay. This category cross entropy, as I said, that internally they'll be doing one hot encoding, right? Based on the number of categories like this, they'll be using one hot encoding. Okay. Always remember, whenever you want your output, in the form of like this. Suppose you have 4 outputs, or suppose you have a problem statement. You have a problem statement wherein you have output as 3 categories. At the end of categorical cross entropy, whenever you are applying a loss function, okay, your output will be coming like this. Suppose I have 3 categories, maybe like 0.3, 0.2, 0.5. You'll be getting multiple probabilities like this. Okay, I'm talking in terms of the output. Okay, I'm talking in terms of the output. The output will be having, you will be getting your categories something like this: 0.3, 0.2, 0.5, and whichever will be the highest, you will be taking that specific class. Okay. Now the next thing is that whenever you are using sparse categorical cross entropy, okay, sparse categorical cross entropy, instead of getting the output like this, you will be getting the output like this one, 0, 1, 2. You'll be getting the index, the output as 2. I told you that in case of categorical cross entropy, you will be getting the probability of each and every class. This is your y hat. In this, when you are using sparse categorical cross entropy, sparse category cross entropy, then your y hat will be getting the maximum probability index. Okay, maximum probability index internally, I'm talking about. Okay, suppose you use a loss function as sparse category cross entropy, then the y hat, when you do a prediction, you will be getting 2, you'll be getting either 1, which will be the highest probability value, you'll be getting that. If you're using category cross entropy, you'll basically be getting the um, you'll be getting this particular value, that is your what is the probability, you'll be getting this all three probabilities value. Then what you'll do is that you can also do, once you get all these things, you will take the maximum index value, and then you will say that this is the output of this particular class. Okay, in this case, what is the maximum index value? Second index. So whatever second index class is there, you are basically going to take that. Okay, this is the basic difference between category and sparse category cross entropy. Binary, you have understood it. Obviously in binary we are going to get the binary class. Now here also you can see that we have something called as mean squared error. See, you also have something called as mean squared error and all. Okay, so let me just write it down for you. Okay, so if I go down, so here in my regression losses, you have mean squared error loss, mean absolute error loss, mean absolute percentage error loss, mean absolute logarithmic error loss, and there is something called as Huber loss. What is this percentage? Here, instead of finding the mean value, here you will be trying to calculate the percentage. Okay, here you will be able to trying to calculate the percentage. Here in cosine similarities, I'll talk about these cosine similarities again. The most common used is mean squared error loss, mean absolute error loss, and then you have Huber loss. Okay, whenever I talk about percentage error, that basically means instead of calculating mean, I am calculating the mean of the percentage. Okay, so I will also be giving you this link of this loss function to all to everyone. So let me just give this. Yeah, so I've given you this particular link. Whenever we are, and for most of the time, see guys, at the end of the day, you don't have to worry much about it, because at the end of the day you will be using binary cross entropy, you will be using category cross entropy, you will be using sparse category cross entropy in case of classification problem. These are the most common probabilities that you are going to use the loss function. Okay, at the end of the day you are going to use one of this. Now coming to the next thing is that what do you use in the case of regression problem statement? In the case of regression problem statement, we use something called as mean squared error, mean absolute error, mean percentage error, and all these things will be shown to you when we are doing the development. You know how you can change this, how can, and then it is very, very simple. The reason why it is very, very simple, because you're just going to use this loss function there. You have to just mention loss function is equal to mean absolute error, like this. When you mention like this, automatically your neural network will understand that, okay, we have to follow this one, we have to apply this particular formula, and we have to perform it. Only that is the difference, guys. And always remember sorry, you'll be seeing that in the future, whatever sessions we'll be discussing, we'll be defining all these things. Okay, now coming to the next thing, guys, I really want to introduce you to one important thing that is called as environments. Okay, that is called as environments. So let me just open this thing. These were some of the loss functions. You can also explore some of the other loss functions that you have, but understand loss functions are different for linear regression and for category, for regression problem statement and for classification problem statement. Now the next topic, and probably 10 to 15 minutes, I'll try to take this particular topic, and then I'll start my doubt clearing session. The thing is that environments. What is environments we are going to discuss? As you know, guys, Python has come up with different versions, like 3, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7. Probably right now it is in 3.8, and the beta version of 3.9 has also been released. Similarly, the most important libraries that we will be using is something like TensorFlow, Keras, PyTorch, right? If you don't know about TensorFlow is the oldest library, which was actually developed by TensorFlow was developed by Google Brains. Okay, so Google have actually come up with this framework, and they try to give it to everyone, as an open source. Now, if I talk about TensorFlow, you also have a lot of versions in TensorFlow, and the versions right now, the major version is either greater than 2.0, or you have less than or equal to, less than 2.0. Okay, so these two versions you basically have in TensorFlow. Okay, right now why I'm specifically telling you different versions, because it is very, very important. I'll tell you. In Keras, in TensorFlow greater than 2.0, greater than or equal to 2.0, Keras has been integrated. Keras has been integrated within this TensorFlow. In less than 2.0, you had to install TensorFlow separately and Keras separately. But if I talk about Keras, what is Keras? This is a wrapper on top of TensorFlow. This is a wrapper on top of TensorFlow. So in the tomorrow session, most probably Sudhanshu will start with respect to TensorFlow. In that TensorFlow, first he'll teach you for the versions which is less than 2.0. Then he'll teach you with versions greater than 2.0. And then he'll also teach you what is the exact difference. In greater than or 2.0, Keras is already integrated with TensorFlow. Now, understand why these versions are important. Why these versions are important. Okay, that we are going to discuss. Understand, guys, since I have been working in 5 to 6 years in the analytics industry, I had started Python with the version 2.7. When I was starting with Python 2.7, at that time we were using sklearn, also the most basic version which had come at that time. And we created one project. Suppose my project one was on this. Now for this project one, first thing you have to note, what is the kind of environment you require. One environment I told you that we require Python 2.7. Because if I try to keep the next Python version, this project will completely fail. Okay. So because of that, one is Python 2.7. Then we also had some sklearn version, right? And we had some other versions, some other libraries. We also used OpenCV for computer vision. Now, this is a kind of environment. Always remember, whenever you create a project, you should first of all create a new environment. Okay, you should create a new environment in short. The reason why we create a new environment, tomorrow, suppose I need to move this project from 2.7 to Python 3.5. At least I'll know that which all versions of different libraries are compatible to each other, and based on that, we will be able to upgrade them. Always understand, whenever you want to work in an analytics industry, creating environment is very, very important. In some of the project, some version of TensorFlow may not work. Some version of OpenCV may not work. Some version of sklearn may not work, right? And some version of Python may not work. But in some of the other version, we need to always combine this kind of versions. Okay, we need to combine this kind of versions. Now, usually when you are working in industry and when you are deploying your projects, right, you first of all have to create an environment in the server. Okay, now what is this environment in the server? Suppose I take a Linux machine in the server. I say that it should have Python 3.6 because I've developed my project in Python 3.6, and there will be one requirement.txt file that I will be creating. In this requirement.txt file, it will mention all the library names I need to install, which is compatible to this all things. And we will try to install over there. Now, if you are using Windows machine, if we are using Windows machine, or it's okay, whether you use Windows or Linux machine, you also have something called as virtual environment. Virtual environment. Virtual environment basically means that in your Windows, you may install a Linux machine. You may install a Linux virtual box. Sorry, Linux virtual box. Okay, Linux virtual box, so that you can you can run any kind of Linux application in your Windows machine also, right? So this is a kind of virtual environment. In Windows also, you can create multiple environments. Now let's see how to check that specific environments. Okay, suppose I have in my Anaconda prompt. Okay, here what I'll do is that I'll just try to see what all environments are there. Okay, suppose I say, and remember guys, just to give you an introduction, first of all, you have to install this Anaconda navigator. Okay, this Anaconda navigator is basically providing you most of the tools. It helps you to manage your environment as efficiently in your Windows machine. In Linux machine also, it has a lot of softwares that have come up. Now here, let's see what all things are there over here. So this is how my Anaconda navigator looks like. I can use Jupyter Notebook, I can use PyCharm, I can use Spider, I can use any of this. And here, if I go and click on this, you can see that I've created so many environments. I've created databases, env, PyTorch, Face, MyEnv, Stain, web crawler, right? These all are specific environments, okay, that I have actually created for solving this kind of project. Tomorrow, again, if I really want to open this particular project, I will go back into this particular environment. Okay, how to create an environment, it will be shown to you, don't worry. Okay, but just let me give you a brief introduction about environments and all. These are okay, one person has a question that these are environments or virtual environments. See guys, virtual environments, when I specifically say that, suppose in my Windows machine I want to keep a Linux virtual box, I can say that as a virtual environment. I can also consider this as a virtual environment because I'm creating a different complete setup for this specific project. Okay, now I have gone into my env PyTorch. So this is the environment which I created for PyTorch. And in this environment, whenever I launch Jupyter Notebook, there I will only be able to play with this particular environment libraries. Like whatever libraries I've installed in this particular environment, I'll be only able to access those libraries in this specific environment. Now, suppose if I go over here, I go and go to my Anaconda prompt. Okay, I go to my Anaconda prompt. Okay, I go to my Anaconda prompt. Now, in Anaconda prompt, suppose I say I am going to activate my environment, my env. This environment I had created only to do my TensorFlow work. Okay, only to do my TensorFlow work. Okay, in this specific environment. So I'm inside this particular environment and I've installed TensorFlow also. So if I go and see in Python, and if I go whether what kind of version I've installed of TensorFlow, you'll be able to see this. So if I'll write import TensorFlow, right, I'll execute this. Sorry. And here, if I write TensorFlow dot underscore version underscore. If I execute this, here you will be able to see that I'm having the version 2.2.0. This basically says that in this environment, I've installed this specific TensorFlow version. Okay. If I really want to see what sklearn I have imported. So if I want to see the version sklearn dot underscore version underscore, then you'll be able to see that I've installed 0.232, right? So I've installed the most recent versions of all the things, and I'm actually working in this specific environment. So if you really want to install, you just have to write pip install. Like I'll just say, see this guys. Okay, cls. Suppose if I write pip install cborn, I want to install some library. I'll just say pip install cborn. I've already installed it, so it says requirement already satisfied. But when I'm writing this This is specifically getting installed in this specific environment itself. Okay, you need to understand this environment concept. Whenever you create a new project, you have to make sure that you have to create a new environment and you have to independently install all the libraries. So tomorrow, after the TensorFlow session is done, you will be facing some problems with respect to the TensorFlow installation. At that time, Sudhanshu will be showing you how to do the installation. And then whenever you have any queries, you have to directly contact the support live team. Okay. Support team, just try to ask them all the questions, what kind of environments, what issues you are facing. You may be facing some kind of errors. The reason that you may be facing some kind of errors, because there are some people who will be using machines from companies. Okay, there will be some people who will be using their personal laptops, but it will be a very old laptop, right now in my system I have Windows 10, then this is also professional. In this I don't face any much problem, because the system is so highly configured. Over here we will not be getting any kind of errors in this, but in yours you may be getting some kind of issues. You may be seeing that, Krish, this is not getting installed and all, right? So always remember, whenever you are starting a new project, you have to make sure that you create a new environment. After creating a new environment, you install all the necessary libraries. Okay, what all libraries you'll be requiring for that specific project, you have to install it and you have to start executing your code. Okay, why we require environments? Because understand, guys, there will be applications. It is just not started from right now. Some of the development projects will be there from 2010, 2012, 2013. So we have to make sure that we create some environments and we create that particular kind of separation with respect to different projects. Okay, so this was a brief introduction about the environments. Tomorrow you'll get to know how to install TensorFlow, how to install Keras, how to install PyTorch, and Sudhanshu will also be taking the theoretical understanding of that. And probably tomorrow, as I'm a little bit busy, I will be going out. In the next week, after he completes, probably he'll be requiring 2 class to complete TensorFlow and all. And once we get into Keras, guys, once we get into Keras, you'll be able to see that Keras will be very, very easy. Now, understand the difficulty level, okay? TensorFlow will be difficult than Keras, because Keras is a wrapper on top of TensorFlow. Wrapper basically means what? TensorFlow, some functionality is here. Suppose this is my optimizer functionality, okay, in TensorFlow. Keras will create a wrapper which calls this optimizer. So because of this implementation wise, we don't have to worry much when we are doing with Keras. The code, we don't have to worry much about it, because Keras will automatically know that it is going to call an API in TensorFlow for this optimizer, and then it is going to execute it. Now, this was all from my side for today's class. Now you can unmute yourself, you can talk, and
Hey Krish.
yes.
Yeah, hi Sneha here. So I
You can
just
also,
wanted,
guys, just a second. Whoever wants to talk, just raise your hand, okay? I'll just try to mute. Yes, please go ahead.
yeah, so I just wanted to know a few things. As you said that like Keras is a wrapper over TensorFlow,
Mm-hmm.
so and it makes things easier, right, towards
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day. So
Yeah.
why do we have to go into TensorFlow and learn the deeper
Yeah,
things?
some of the things when you'll be seeing some advanced project, right, which Ineuron will be teaching you. At that time, you'll be seeing that that is not possible by Keras. Some
All
of the
right.
things is only being implemented by TensorFlow, because there will be some inbuilt libraries that will be given, some functionalities that will be given by people as an open source.
Okay. I have two more questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah,
The second one is about the binary cross entropy. So as you mentioned that the predicted value, which is y hat,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
that is calculated using the sigmoid function, which is 1 by 1 plus e to the power minus z, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to know what's the value of z over there. Is it y, the one,
No,
which
no,
is
no,
the
no, no.
actual value?
W transpose X plus B.
W transpose X plus B, right?
Okay. Okay.
This,
All right.
this Z is
Uh,
nothing but this W transpose. I have explained this, right, previously also. W
yeah. Yeah.
transpose X plus B,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
Yeah. And the last question is, I just wanted to know the difference of sparse categorical cross entropy again.
Sparse categorical cross entropy is nothing,
Yes.
guys. See, in categorical cross entropy, we are getting 3 probability values, right?
Yeah.
Suppose I have 3 categories, right? I
Yeah.
will be having these 3 values like this. Okay. In
Right.
sparse, what it does is that it does one more step ahead. Okay. Suppose I have 0.3, 0.2, 0.5. This is my class 1, this is my class 2, this is my class 3. Out of this, which is the highest probability?
0.5.
0.5.
Yeah. The
So
third class.
over here, I will be getting my output like this. In sparse, what it does is that instead of giving all the output, it will just give this third class output.
Okay. So it's like a subset of the cross entropy thing,
It
right?
is one more step ahead to this, you can say.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Yeah.
Krish,
That's all.
Hello,
how is it
Krish.
differentiating
Hello,
from
Krish. This in multi-class entropy, their yi summation of yi log yij hat was there, right?
Mhm.
In that when we take that one hot encoding,
Mhm.
the corresponding class will be one, and rest all will be zeros.
Mhm. True.
So when we get y hat from the neural network output, in
Mhm.
that if we substitute this along with yij and log yi hat, here
Mhm.
yij for only good will be one, bad or neutral will be zeros. When we
Mhm.
are doing summation for zeros, however they are getting zeros, right? So when we multiply with
Understand
zeros
one thing.
into
Just
y
a
hat,
second. Just a second. When
okay,
did I
okay,
say
okay.
that yi hat we will be getting zeros and ones? I told you we will be getting probabilities, right? Only
Yes,
yij will
yes.
be zeros or ones.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Hello,
here,
Krish.
Just a second. Just a second. Yeah. Continue, please.
yeah, here yij into log yi hat of ij.
Hmm.
Then in that in the softmax we will get 4 or 5 like multi-class y hats,
Yes.
and
Yes.
here we'll be multiplying with corresponding yij. For
Yes.
in that only one corresponding class value will be one. Rest all
Yes.
other classes will be zeros.
Perfect.
So
Yes.
when we are doing summation, all the rest one class value, like for a good it will be 1 into its corresponding y hat value, and 0 into its y hat plus 0 into y hat. So however through one hot encoding, zeros are there. So again, why we need summation? We can write simply yi hat that corresponding into yij into log yi hat of only that particular class, right?
See, what you are saying is that, as far
Hmm.
as I understood, you're saying that why
Hmm.
we are doing this summation again and again.
Yes.
No,
Yes. Yes.
no.
Yes.
See. Initially, suppose I am passing this first record, okay, for the training.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now over there, suppose we got everything will be zero only with respect to this one. Okay. With respect to this
Exactly.
one. But remember one more thing. When we are predicting y hat, I may have initially different probability values, right?
Okay.
I have to
Yes.
change this
Yes.
probability values also, right? In order to do it in the right way. Initially, only you will not be getting the right value. Does it make sense what
Okay.
I'm trying to say?
Okay. You mean to say to get more precise like a prediction,
Yes.
we are doing
We have to
summation.
do
You
this.
mean
We
to
have
say?
to keep on doing in every iteration then. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Okay.
in the back
Okay.
propagation, your weights will be
But
updated. And again, you have to go and do the front propagation. You have to keep on updating this probability. Unless and until you don't get the right probability, this loss value will never come down. Okay.
okay, I thought that when zeros were there, why need to do summation? However, rest all
It's
will be
okay.
zero. So
See,
that
yeah,
summation
that only
two
I'm saying,
values.
no. But
Okay.
this is only related to some y hat,
Got
right?
it.
Y hat. Y hat.
Yes, yes, I
I have
got
to change
it.
this value. Yeah.
Because of this, the good probability will be changed when we are
Yes.
doing back propagation, so that we are
Yes.
doing summation. You mean to say?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Many thanks.
Hi,
Hello,
Krish.
Okay,
Krish.
Krish.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. One by one, guys. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
Krish, actually, I wanted to ask you, like in multi-cross entropy and sparse one, how is it differentiating between sparse data and dense data? Like, what mechanism is being used internally?
Okay, what is the? Just tell me one thing. What is sparse data first of all?
Where we have more number of zeros and like in case
Where we
of
have more number of zeros and ones, right? Do we not get more number of zeros and ones in one hot encoded?
yes.
Right? When we are getting like this, sparse cross entropy is just doing one more step ahead of that. It's just being able to find out which is having the maximum index, maximum value probability index. It is just taking out that and it is giving to you.
Okay, so internally they are implementing the implementation is same.
Yes, it is just being able to find out the maximum probability with respect to the output.
All right. Great.
Hi, Krish.
Hello,
Hello,
Krish.
Krish.
I
Yeah, yeah.
wanted to ask this one thing, like about the probabilities in multi-class classification. You said that we will be having multiple probabilities, like log of y I hat. These are the probabilities. Like, how are we
Y I
calculating
hat
those?
is the probabilities. Y I
Yes.
hat is the
So how?
probability.
Yes, y I hat is the probability. How are we calculating those probabilities for multi-class classification in that case? Like,
You told right softmax activation function.
okay, okay,
Did
When
not
okay.
you hear that? From the last class only I'm talking about.
yeah,
Sir,
when
for
we are
cross
using
entropy, when we have y hat, when we need to calculate y hat, we basically use sigmoid function, right?
For binary.
Yes. So basically for cross entropy, but then you mentioned that y minus log 1 minus y hat when y is equal to 0.
This is the formula according to the logistic regression. This is like for the binary classification, this is for the one versus all.
can you show me the
Yeah.
how many
But
uh,
then where do we use this minus log 1 minus y hat? Like, do we
This
implement
one,
it in
this
the
one,
formula?
this one.
Oh no, down you have written, right? If y is equal to 0, log
Huh.
1 minus y hat.
So see, if your output value is zero, see in
This
binary
is the training
classification,
output, right?
yeah,
If y is equal to
yeah.
0. Okay.
When I say y, that basically means training output. When I say y hat, that is basically means the predicted output. So in binary classification, you may have y is equal to 0, y is equal to 1, right? Yes or no?
Yes. So do we put minus log 1 minus y hat in the formula, or how do we do it?
Minus log this one, this
1
formula you say?
minus y hat. Down which you have written.
Yeah, like this only we'll put. Understand one thing, log of this positive number will be a negative number. So this negative and negative will be multiplied, it will be a positive number. Okay.